Dear students, this is Dr. Srihet Shankar Rao, lecturer in economics, TRR Government Degree College, Kandukur, Prakasam district. Today, we are going to discuss the very important topic of macroeconomy, that is Keynes' theory of employment. First, let us understand the context in which the Keynes theory has come up. So during Great Economic Depression of 1930s, which happened in the Western countries, especially UK and USA, where there was a complete collapse of income and employment of the people. People were literally on the road. They could not find the employment. So as a result, there was no income for them. But to understand this a great economic depression, that time there was classical economic theories such as they proposed a self-adjusting market mechanism. If anything happens, if any deviation from the demand and supply, so there would be automatic adjusting mechanism that was functioning in the economy, they used to assume. But they could not show any solution to this economic depression. And also there was a law, says law, that is supply creates its own demand. If we keep on producing, the demand will be generated. There won't be any problem of buying the goods. But that also failed. There was another theory, classical theory of ACP goes, wage price flexibility. So whenever there was any unemployment, Pico said you decrease the wages so that you can accommodate more number of people, you can provide the jobs. That also could not do that. And the reducing the prices also could not work to increase the demand because people do not have any problem, do not have any income. So from there, classical economy has completely failed to understand that great economic depression of 1930. From there, Keynes has come up with the new kind of idea in understanding the great economic depression of that time. So he sees the economic depression from a different angle called demand side of the analysis. So from there, the Keynes theory of employment has emerged. So from this lecture, we are going to learn the important concepts in the Keynes economic theory and working mechanism of the Keynes economic theory and the contemporary relevance also we will be looking at. First to know, so who is this Keynes? So where he has come from, what he has done. Keynes' full name was John Maynard Keynes. He was considered as a revolutionary British economist of the time. So he was a professor in Cambridge University in UK. He wrote a book called General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money. This was very famous book of the time because it has provided a completely a different theory for the problem of the time. So he has explained his theory of employment in this book. He, being a great economist of that time, he was instrumental in establishing Bretton Woods institutions such as IMF, International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank, which are very influential after that time. Currently also we can see their influence across the world in influencing the development and growth. First, before getting into the core of the Keynes theory, let us understand what was his critique of classical employment theory. He said that Say's law cannot operate. We know that Say's law was supply creates its own demand. That means if you produce it, it can be automatically sold because people get the income out of that production. So it cannot work because of the saving leakages. So the sum of the saving will not automatically will go to the investment as the classicals used to think. And also it will not work the low animal spirit or the expected profits that he termed as the marginal efficiency of the capital, that was very low among the entrepreneurs. That's why they didn't show any interest to make further investment because the expected profits were less at the time. He also attacked Pigo's base price flexibility principle. He said that it will not operate because there was a wage rigidity. People used to protest if you want to reduce the wages. At the same time, prices will not change so easily and in a short period of time. So there was a price rigidity also that was there. Hence, this base price flexibility will not operate up in the depression time. Coming to the assumptions of Keynes theory. So main assumptions such as he assumed that his economic system was capitalistic system. That means market forces still operate. It's a free market. So his second one is that his analysis is based on the short-term analysis. He doesn't believe much in the long-term analysis. Hence, he stated that all are dead in the long run. It was a very famous Keynes proposition. He only believes in short analysis, and he gave much importance to the both real and monetary factors in the determination of income and employment. The real factor means capital, labor, land, entrepreneurship. These are the real factors. And monetary factors are demand for money, demand for supply, interest rate. So he gave importance to the both the factors in determination of income and employment in an economy. So he assumed that income and employment are positively related. They go together. If you say the employment, that also includes the income. In the further analysis, we will wherever we use employment, that means it also includes the income. So another assumption is that government with its expenditure can trigger the economy. This assumption was completely opposite to the classical economists, where they did not give any scope for government to interfere or trigger the economy. So these are the main assumptions of the Keynes theory of employment. So what are the important concepts in the Keynes theory? The effective demand is a very important concept in deciding the income and employment in the economy. So what is this effective demand? The effective demand is the level of employment where the aggregate demand equals the aggregate supply. That means whatever is produced should be sold at that point of time. From there, you will have a full employment. So next one is aggregate demand. It is the money value of output which the producer must expect to get by selling that output. It is producer's expected money value is to their total expenditure. This we can put in a formula. Aggregate demand is equal to private consumption, private investment, government expenditure, and net income from the abroad. So aggregate supply. Aggregate supply means the money value of output which the producer must receive by selling it. It is a total income of the producers. So they must receive of their value of output. To have a holistic understanding of the whole Keynesian model, this flowchart will give some answer to that. So in this flow chart, can we see that first one is employment. Employment depends on the effective demand. The effective demand, we know that where the aggregate demand and aggregate supply equals. So Keynes gave much importance to the aggregate demand rather than aggregate supply because he thought that aggregate supply is not a problem, because he was talking about the depression time economy where the productive capacity was of that economy was so huge. So whatever is demanded, it can be produced and supplied. So supply was not at all a problem of the time. These were the economies of advanced countries. So there was no problem of supply. It was the problem of demand. So purchasing the goods and services was the problem. So his analysis more goes into the analyzing the aggregate demand. So as per Keynes, aggregate demand depends on the consumption, investment, government expenditure, and also net income from the abroad, which we have not shown for the sake of simplicity. So first one is consumption. So this is consumption and investment are both are private one here. So consumption by the private households generally depends on the two things. One is income and the second one is propensity to consume. How much you are going to spend out of your total income. So either it is average propensity to consume or marginal propensity to consume, that is additional consumption from the additional income. The second one is investment. The investment as per the Keynes depends on the two things. Marginal efficiency of capital, that is nothing but prospective profits, and the rate of interest. A marginal efficiency of capital depends on the two things: cost of capital and expectations of the profits. The rate of interest depends on the two things: money supply and demand for money. This Keynes called termed as a liquidity preference for the money. So money supply is given, that is decided by the central bank. So money demand will be decided by factors of the households such as transaction motive, precautionary motive, and speculative motive. So here the problem is this private consumption and the private investment. Generally during the depression both will be low, because in case of consumption, people generally they have a very less income. So as a result, they will be able to spend very less. Their ability to spend is very less. Very less. In case of investment, so investment as per the Keynes depends much on the marginal efficiency than the rate of interest, because during the depression already rate of interest was so low, it was caught up in the liquidity trap where the monetary policy will have very less effect, or you can say no effect, on increasing or decreasing the interest rate. So interest is already low, still investment do not take place because the expected profits are prospective profits are less. So this Keynes put it in another term, the animal spirit of the entrepreneurs. The animal spirit of the entrepreneur depends on the prospective profits of the capital. So that was very less during the depression time. That's why as a whole investment does not take place much during the depression time, private investment. So as per Keynes, both private consumption and private investment both would be less during depression time. So that is why he gave much importance to the government expenditure, which is autonomous. Here, the government has to take the proactive role in increasing the aggregate demand, thereby the effective demand and employment. Since private consumption and private investment were low, So once this government spend through public works and various programs, that will put some money in the pockets of people, either through by direct transfer or through some works. So that will create a demand that will again trigger the consumption and investment, so that all will lead to the aggregate demand and effective demand and employment. This is the a glimpse of the Keynesian model, how it works. To see it in some graphs, how the determination of equilibrium of employment takes place. The graph, we can say that it is the equilibrium between the aggregate demand and aggregate supply. The aggregate demand curve is in the graph, it is like this, and aggregate supply, it goes like this. So whenever these two are met, there the effective demand takes place, where equilibrium level of employment takes place. So how this model works? Already we have seen the flow chart. Now with the help of the graph, how you can increase the income or employment in an economy. It is shown that first aggregate demand here is this at this level, where the consumption and investment, private consumption and private investment. So aggregate supply is this one. Here the equilibrium takes place, but this is effective demand, but it is not sufficient to provide the full employment to all the people. Hence, it needs to be increased. The aggregate demand needs to be increased because aggregate supply is always there, ready to change if there is a demand. The problem was demand. Since, as per already we have seen that, as per Keynes, we have already seen that private consumption and private investment during depression was so low. Hence, government has to increase its expenditure. Here in this graph, we showed that the increase in government expenditure by this level. So that the total aggregate demand will increase from this to this point to this. So this is the new aggregate demand as a result of government expenditure. See C plus I plus G. So at the given aggregate supply curve, if there is increase in aggregate demand curve, definitely it will generate more demand. That means we'll have more income and employment from Y1 to Y2. This much. The income and employment will increase. So in this way, government can increase the aggregate demand, thereby the national income and also employment. So how this government expenditure can be increased? There are two ways for this. One is fiscal policy and second is the monetary policy. Keynes gave much importance to the fiscal policy. He has advocated for extensive fiscal policies rather than the monetary policy because, as already I have mentioned before, so monetary policy was already caught in the liquidity trap where it will not have any influence in reducing the interest rate, which was already low during depression time. Hence, he has advocated much importance to the fiscal policy. That means printing more money at by the government. That money should be spent on the public works in the public domain. That will provide some additional income and employment to the people. That will trigger the demand. So that demand will create income to the people, income and employment to the people. So this is how this Keynes theory works. This is the graphical expression of that working. So what is the relevance of Keynes theory in the present context or at any time? So Keynes theory is highly relevant first for the economies which were caught in the depression. The economies which are caught in the depression has to definitely approach or Keynes have some solutions to bring those economies out of the depression because so he has addressed the role of the government to bring the economy out of the depression. This theory has got more relevance during current time of this COVID-19 crisis. This COVID-19 crisis has created an economic crisis, so where people lost the employment and the income. So already incomes were falling. So in this case, both private income, private consumption, private investment both were low. In this case, by using the Keynes theory, we can advocate for more proactive government expenditure in health, strengthening the health and strengthening the education system and strengthening the public infrastructure. So in this way, by spending more by the government, by following the Keynes theory of employment, Keynes theory, we can have some solution to the present COVID-19 crisis. This theory also has relevance for the developing countries who are generally facing the problem of private consumption and private investment problems. The private consumption, private investment generally low in the developing countries. Here, government needs to be proactive in investing and in spending in the public domain that will provide more aggregate demand so that people get more income and employment through that. So, what is a critique of Keynes theory? Because it is not completely away from critique. Because even after Keynes theory, though he could show some solution to the Great Depression of 1930 by bringing the analysis of demand through the government expenditure, by increasing the government expenditure, still there was some problem. So Milton Friedman identified that Keynes theory has ignored the supply side of the economy. It also has ignored the role of the money because uh, after 1940s, 50s, 60s, the economies were facing the supply side of the problem. The inflation was so high, so Keynes did not take those things into consideration. So he has completely ignored the supply side. Another critic is that Keynes is assumed there would be sticky prices, that means prices would not change so fast, and there would be wage rigidity, that means wages also will not change much because the labor will oppose the wage reduction. So, but these are not true in the current capitalistic economy. So they quickly change prices, and both prices and wages quickly change. So this is another criticism of Keynes theory. Third one is that is a supply side economist who argue that Keynes excess demand or inflationary gap is not true. So Keynes said that whenever there is an inflationary, it is the result of the excess demand. That means people buy the goods and services more. So hence the prices of goods and services will increase. But this is not true. There will be supply side problem also. Whenever there is a supply shortage, then also you can see the increasing the prices, that is inflation. So these are the main critique of Keynes theory. So coming to the conclusion. So by knowing the theory of Keynes theory of employment, it can be said that his theory was a revolutionary approach in understanding the demand side of the economy, especially in the advanced countries. So it could provide some solutions to the 1930 Great Depression and also in some advanced countries where the supply capacity is there but the demand is less. So from to those problems, Keynes' theory has provided some solutions. So it made a specific ground for the government expenditure in the public works. So we already seen that Keynes advocates for the fiscal policy. Through that, he wants the government to spend more for the public works, so that will trigger the uh, aggregate demand, so that people will get more income and employment. Finally, the Keynes theory has limitations in the countries, actually in working in those countries which have the supply side problems, because he has ignored to some extent the supply side problem, because he has assumed that supply side was all right. Whenever you want some goods and services, the economy has the capacity to produce and supply it. So there won't be any problem. But however, it is not universal. Still, even advanced countries also, there would be some supply side problems, but they are very high in advanced countries. So in this case, it theory has some limitation. However, it is a theory that shows some solutions to the, especially the economies which are caught in the depression, economies which are lacking the demand. So thank you for your patience listening. Thank you.